and doubled production and consumption, as now a minimum of 2 household structures, 2 sets of bedrooms, kitchens, refrigerators, microwaves, food processors, televisions, etc., would be required to serve a one-time single family. Individuals from backgrounds and of moral precepts which would otherwise make them unfit for positions of authority would be used as bludgeons against those males who would dare attempt to assert their rights against the state now committed to enslaving them. As our very best and brightest genetic engineers can tell you, all pre-Bokanovsky genetic studies using the Mendel method have proved time and time again that the epigenetic inheritance factors, even in these pre-engineered live births between producers and consumers of the past, were insurmountable and inconsistent with an equal society. Like the many low-skilled, low-information union drones who insisted they could run the means of production better than the men who invented the products and the factories to build them where they found employment, the uneducable and the unaccomplished would be unleashed to poison, like Nietzsche's tarantulas, the hand of their only benefactor. Without a clearly defined society as our own, where all caste members are conditioned to understand their role in society, a type of societal madness eventually spread amongst the people. Imagine the soul-crushing identity schism in lions forced to live under the sway of fat and pampered domestic house cats. It is an affront to the order of things that could not long stand, and it did not. Utilizing techniques pioneered by the totalitarian socialist regimes that replaced the lineage-enforced patriarchal kingdoms of the old world, and holding control of the burgeoning world-spanning communication technologies, radio, television, and film, the gauntlet of centralized authoritarian control was reforged to take a new grip on the free destiny of the masses. State-approved truths would be repeated over and again by state-controlled media outlets, informing, then reinforcing the messages, propaganda fabricated by cagey media technicians, predecessors to our own emotional engineers. Where it was once thought total belief in propaganda required tens of thousands of hours of endless repetition, reality proved that the masses, in their majority, required only a single exposure to the properly weaponized thought construct to ensure total belief. A single exposure, so efficient were the mass-produced psycho-response motivators that family ties, long-term friendships, business relationships, and even national alliances could be shattered in less than 30 seconds with a properly produced, weaponized media. As the world governments held sway over the means of mass communication, with federalized communication commissions requiring licensing and the like, they would slowly take control of all public media, where once trusted sources of information became the instruments of propaganda-centric infotainment. The wizened central figure of the outdated patriarchy, the doctors, the engineers, the builders of society, were now relegated to buffoon-like status and stunted, malformed, misanthropic cretins, much like our own servitor workers and ditch diggers, with their limited intellectual potential and degenerate behaviors, were pushed to the forefront of the one-time survival of the fittest, alpha male-dominated hegemony. Now the diseased mice would rule over the healthy mice, the elephants, the house cats, and lions, with their natural order upended and redefined, and the long-suffered patriarchy collapsed into chaos as the diseased vermin unleashed a plague of venomous scorpions amongst those they claimed a right to lead. Using the time-tested method of weaponized immigration, the producer nation-states, already divided by degenerating culture, veiled leadership, and distorted identity, would be invaded by teeming hordes of culturally inferior peoples, illiterate in their own languages, plagued with problematic genetics of heavily overbred consanguineous people, a living weapon as dangerous to society as any nuclear explosive device. As expected, because of the many years of psycho-predictive programming, the peoples of the invaded nation-states fought amongst themselves instead of protecting their soon-to-fail societies from a known cultural human cancer. 40 years of on-demand abortion caused a population deficit of almost 50 million, 23 million of whom would have been, statistically speaking, males prepared to defend their genetic patriarchy from the invasive throwback populations hell-bent on supplanting all they came into contact. With the live birther alpha male genetic lines minimalized by a century and a half of warfare and forced conscription, then further supplemented by the abortion culture, the replacement male populations overrepresented in a single generation less than half a century by the male equivalent of our gamma male servitor clones. And everyone knows a gamma clone can't do it alone. The rough and rugged individualist of the fictionalized frontier era was replaced by a directionless, goalless, shiftless population of vid-stim cretins who allowed themselves to be easily overwhelmed. The destructive, weaponized social messaging disseminated across the early cyber communities flickered across pixel screens, creating smaller and smaller factions of connected people, leaving millions already spending their lives in apartment, in utter isolation, as social chaos now raged outside their safe spaces. Then the lights went out. The failed-by-design leadership, exampled by government heads routinely chosen by the ever-growing number of non-producing consumers, distracted itself and its constituents with contrived outrages and selective offenses to the point where the infrastructure collapsed and society descended into turmoil and armed conflict. Power grids failed, lines of communications closed, water, food and fuel were scarce. The once great urban centers of the world descended into chaos. Fortunately, men like our founder, his foreship Henry T., planned in advance for the long-predicted societal collapse, and as the chaos reached its crescendo, secretly trained and funded peacekeepers were sent to quell the disturbances that remained in the formerly orderly urban meccas. Within 3 short years, the global population of 5 million was reduced by war, famine, disease, and other deprivations to less than 1.5 billion. It was from these survivors that we did salvage the genetic stock which we used to build our brave new society. Community, identity, stability, a new trinity built on the ashes of the patriarchal house of cards held up by fathers, sons, and all-powerful ghosts. Genetic engineers who once only worked to benefit the very wealthy were now the masons of a new breed of man, each designed according to our society's ever-present needs. The Epsilon and Delta clone workers, stunted and conditioned to perform dangerous and crucial labor. The ever-dutiful Gammas, crafted to cheerfully perform our society's more general needs. Why, with 15,000 clones produced from a single Gamma zygote, you might endure an entire year looking at the same Gamma face in a multitude of functions before stumbling across a new variant. We are fortunate our Beta-class caste are all unique in appearance, yet identical, via neo-Pavlovian conditioning used on the precision-crafted Bukanovsky-tweaked zygotes. And finally, or firstly, at the very top of the genetic pyramid, we're alphas. Where would our society be without the alpha class who work tirelessly to maintain the psycho-engineering schools, the hourly news programs, and even the feeling motion pictures? Without the alpha class to oversee all, it could well be presumed all we have built could again descend into a world of class and racial bigotry, where production and consumption are threatened by prejudice, tribalism, and random ability. While our society is stable, there are still small settlements of pre-Ford re-evolution that look down on our own practices, our pre-teen sexualization, and our anti-nature conditioning. Entire population groups remain in such primitive state that they only engage in sexual liaisons exclusively with members of the opposite sex, and not even for recreation purposes, but for procreation via viviparous live birth like wild animals. There are even some who collect and read books. I know, horrific, but 100% true. There are still some in the great wastelands between the coastal megacities who reject our advanced society and technology as they cling to such outdated and etheric concepts like truth, honor, or perversions like monogamy and chastity, and even the very confusing heterosexuality. These retrograde societies always stand as an example of the entropic elements a well-balanced and perfectly maintained society like ours must seek to avoid at all costs. Random elements like free thought or differences in opinion must be purged from our social discourse. While there were once those who would argue an ideology that cannot withstand critical analysis is weak, we have decided that it means we are strong. Where there are those who insist a caste system is systemic bigotry, we say it is systemic order. Those who say our orgy night bacchanalia instills a cold, insensitive disassociation with others, we say it brings us closer to our community than those couples who selfishly restrict their love to one person, where we expect our society to condition newly decanted embryozygotes to perform a specific function. Those primitives who question us psychotically dare to raise their own children as families in accordance with their preferred customs and under strict gender identity dogmas. Of course, I do not mean to trigger you with pornographic descriptions of the savage cultures outside of our technological containment barrier, but as alpha-level propaganda specialists, you must have a full understanding of the divergent cultures existing parallel to our own. Cultures we must avoid all mention and reference to, not because we are weak, but because we are strong. Your individual division assignments will be uploaded to your personal cyberpods, and you will have your standard development time before your product is due for review. Remember to exclude all references to the pre-Ford societies of patriarchy and of the deviant concepts of heterosexuality, family, parents, and children. Avoid all vulgarity, such as the expressions father, mother, and son, and daughter. And for Ford's sake, do not make any mention of books. Our last College of Emotional Engineering lost 5 of its top students because they expressed too much interest in those damn paper books the primitives cherish so proudly. 5 of our best exiled to remote island outposts for revealing dangerous and forbidden curiosity. Our society is not so weak as to allow those who might embrace an alien ideology to be suffered to live amongst us. Any and all who dare threaten our stability, any who dare challenge our hypnopedic conditioning, and any who might dare raise the possibility of a flaw in our social construct must be purged to protect it. Not because we are weak, not because we fear that we are flawed, but because we are strong. You all look like well-conditioned alphas who know what is best for you and what is best for our society. I trust you understand the imperative I have expressed to you. This presentation is now concluded. Good luck with your assignments. I will be checking in with you individually for your periodic review updates. Be well. One moment, Mr. Dynamo. You have produced a most efficient report, and I am sure our fresh young alpha-level emotional engineers learned quite a bit from your most detailed work. Once again, you have proved yourself a most capable individual, but too capable an individual. So, I have a new assignment for you on an island in the North Atlantic.
Now all the blessings of a good father compass thee. Arise and say how thou camest here.
I wonder, how many goodly creatures are there here? How beauteous mankind is. Oh, brave, new world that has such people in it. Is new to thee.
You've been listening to Jim Dynamo's Bad Machine. Be part of the radio revolution by following our Twitter page @BadMachineRadio and by visiting Jim Dynamo's Bad Machine on Facebook. Bad Machine is a one-man media production, the exclusive owner of all original content. Otherwise, no rights are reserved. 2016.